If you've ever found yourself with a project on your needles or your hook that you really hate, then today's video is for you. I'm sitting down to show 4 projects that, for various reasons, have become failures. I'll tell the story and share the details for each project as the video unfolds, but at this point I've decided all of these projects are not necessarily worth finishing. As you'll see, there's a little bit too much fabric. These are too far along to just trash. So I have some ideas, but I'd also love to hear your great insights on how I can salvage some of this hard work. So stick around and let's get into it. I'll start by saying that all of these projects come from the beginning of my crafting journey. When I was selecting these patterns, selecting the yarn, and working on these projects, I didn't know near as much as I know now. I didn't have the same resources available to me. I hadn't learned through my own trial and error with other successes or failures to know what I like and what I don't like, what makes a project worth it for me. So we fast forward to now where I have a nice wardrobe full of sweaters, full of successes, I'd call them, which helps me know exactly what I'm looking for and what I need to do to execute a project that I'll be happy with. There's definitely a flip side to any of the successes that I like to highlight, that I like to showcase here on the channel, and those are the failures. Those are the projects that get started and they never get shared with you. They never get finished, they never get worn, they never see a life of their own. So I'm turning to one of my resources for all things creative, Craftsy, for a couple of ideas for how I can salvage these projects and all of the time, all of the work that's gone into them so far. Thank you to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. In the past, Craftsy has majorly saved me with all of my sewing projects, with a lot of my finishing, a lot of the finessing that goes into any of the handmade garments and projects that I make. So today I'm turning to this online community to shuffle through the more than 2,000 classes that Craftsy offers. One class is called Knit to Flatter, taught by Amy Herzog. It's all about identifying your body shape and then taking into account details of patterns and garments, things like necklines, hems, sleeves, to find a project that will fit you and flatter you in the way that you desire. And taking that one step further, there's hand knit garment design, taught by Shirley Padden. This is a great chance to dive into sweater design with an extremely experienced designer and teacher. One incredible asset of this class is that it includes a 26-page workbook full of worksheets, charts, and instructions for shaping and designing a garment of your own devising. Now for the class that I think might help save one of my sweater failures, and that is Make a Memory Bear from a Quilt. Learn sewing techniques for a sentimental keepsake, taught by Mary Beth Temple. If you were here on the channel for some of my Shetland videos, then you saw my visit with Wendy of Burra Bears, and I thought her whole process of taking abandoned or very precious keepsake fabrics and turning them into memory bears was just incredible. So in the back of my mind, I've had that idea tucked away that if I end up with a sweater that I just can't wear or don't want to wear, I could take that fabric that I've spent a lot of time knitting and possibly turn it into some sort of keepsake, some sort of stuffed animal to either keep for myself or pass on and give it a future life. In addition to these fiber arts classes, Craftsy offers a huge range of topics, everything from painting and drawing all the way to gardening and fitness. So if you're someone who's considering checking out all of these classes and offerings, you can do so via the link in my description box. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description box will have access to a full year's premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. This offer is available to any first-time Craftsy members. So if anything here has piqued your interest, then I'll see you over on Craftsy. Now let's take a look at these project failures. First up, let's take a look at Arctic Spring. This is a beautiful pattern, a beautiful design. So in no way is my failure a representation of this project or the designer. I think this is a fabulous project to the point where I would like it in my wardrobe. I would like to make this, and I think I have the solution. We'll get into that as this unfolds. So first, let's take a look at the pattern. This is Arctic Spring by Sasky & Co. You may know Sasky & Co. by their old design name, which was the Petite Knitter. And now that Petite Knits is so prevalent and it's like the name on everyone's tongue, I think the Petite Knitter changed to Sasky & Co. for a little bit more clarity, which makes total sense to me. So here in the pattern, let's look at a few important things. First of all, the yarn weight is DK. When we look at the suggested yarn, 2 yarns are listed, and this is really common with a lot of modern patterns. You'll see the yarn weight listed on the Ravelry pattern page, but then you see 2 yarns used by a designer. In this case, our yarn weight is DK. If we look at the yarns used by the designer, one is fingering weight and one is lace weight. So neither are DK, but when they put the fingering weight with the lace weight, it results in a DK weight fiber and gauge. So I don't know what I was thinking, but when I started this project, I chose to use worsted weight yarn with mohair, an additional strand of mohair. So I don't know. I don't know if I got hit on the head or if this came to me in a dream. I have no idea why I thought it was such a good idea to take this sweater from a DK weight and bulk it all the way up to essentially an Aran weight, having my worsted weight held with mohair, which in my experience does bulk up the gauge. I don't know what's going on. So that was my first mistake. Now, I would never do that. I don't think I would look at a DK weight pattern and think for any reason I needed to make it out of worsted weight yarn. Sometimes I work a DK weight pattern out of worsted weight yarn. If there's a fiber or a color that I want to use more, maybe I have the yarn in my stash. In this case, I don't know. I don't need to say anything more about that. Crazy decision on my part. And it really affected the resulting garment, which we'll take a look at now. So again, beautiful pattern. I love it. I love the look of it. I would do it again. And I think if I used the fingering weight version of Woolstock held with mohair, that would be fine. I don't know why in the world I made the choice to hold worsted weight Woolstock with mohair. It is extremely heavy and it is extremely warm. I wish you could feel this sweater because it weighs at least a few pounds. It's just madness. Now let's look up close at the stitches and the tension. For the most part, I think the color work looks pretty nice. However, when I got further down in the yoke, following a section where I needed to use 3 colors in each row, I have a lot of increases happening and I have puckering. Now, I tried to be as careful as I could be with my 3 colors of color work, which is not fun to do in my experience. I love 2-color color work. We talked about this recently in some color work videos and a Zoom session. 2-color color work is a dream. It's wonderful. It's ideal. 3-color or 4-color color work, I think, is a completely different beast. It's a different technique in the hands. It can be much more difficult to manage your tension. So for me, it's something I don't choose really ever. If there's a 3rd color that I need to use in a project, I would rather slip those stitches for the entire round and come back and knit just that color on its own. Or if they are a little more infrequent in the design, I would rather go in with duplicate stitch to add them after the fact. So this is one of my only, I think possibly the only time I have done and stuck with a 3-color color work project. And it was much more challenging than any two-color colorwork project I've done. So that resulted with puckering. And I showed this many, many moons ago on the channel because it's been abandoned for over a year now. And I said that even with blocking, this has been blocked kind of aggressively and pressed down. I can't get rid of the puckering. And you should be able to see the slight puckering. There it is. So that happens completely around the sweater, the complete circumference in this portion of the yoke. So for me, I wear my sweaters at a yarn shop. I'm wearing my projects around really incredible crafters almost any time I wear them. So if there's a big enough issue like tension or mistakes or ill fit, I usually don't leave it. I try to find a solution, or I redo the project, or I repurpose the fabric, because it will bother me as the wearer, and I will be around people who will notice it. And they might even ask, not in a rude way, not in a mean way. They might just observe it and be curious as to whether or not it was a design element or a mistake or an issue with the yarn. Who knows? So for me, this was a no. This is a no-go. Next, let's take a look at the spooky shaping on the sleeve. Again, this was my doing. Because I was working this pattern out of worsted weight, or really Aran weight yarn, I don't know what I had to do. I'm sure I had to make changes in the pattern for things to fit, especially when it came to decreasing the length of the sweater, the decrease rate, the length of the sleeve. It's just a mess. So you can look at this decrease and it looks absolutely foolish. If this sweater were to have fit me well, if I didn't have the issue in the tension and it weren't too hot, I wouldn't mind having this kind of sleeve. I absolutely have other sweaters behind me on the shelves that have sleeves that look like this because I did some sort of haphazard change to the decreasing. And it's your sleeve, it's under your arm, nobody is looking at it. Nobody would see it unless you took the sweater off, laid it flat on a table, and pointed it out to everyone. So that's what I'm doing here for you. I'm abandoning this sweater for a few reasons. So let's just put them in writing. One, the fiber choice. I don't know what possessed me, but it's too heavy. It doesn't feel good. It's too hot. I will not be able to wear it. Two, the tension. The issues in the tension, my own doing. It's just too much for me to be happy with it. And three, I'm going to say other changes, like the fit of the sleeves, the changes I had to make because I was working out of a different weight. I didn't know as much then about my own preferences of fit. I didn't have a good grasp on certain guidelines or ideal practices in how to pace a decrease or how to shape a sleeve or make an adjustment to the fit of a garment. So this is abandoned. It has one sleeve and one sleeve only. Before working the second sleeve, I would have pulled back this sleeve to fix it. And it's pretty. You may be thinking, it's a pretty sweater. I would wear that sweater. And you might, but I bet if you were to feel it and feel how heavy and solid it is, it might not be your favorite sweater to wear. So what do I do with this sweater? What happens now? Initially, I thought I might cut it open at the front. There's no added steek, but it is a non-superwash wool. So if I were to do a little reinforcing, maybe with my sewing machine on each side of the front center, I could cut it open. And initially I thought I would add a zipper. I would add a zipper to make it like a jacket. Because it's so heavy and so dense, I thought it could work well as a jacket. The pattern is pretty. If I'm only wearing it on the go, I'll be moving so fast that nobody could see the tension issues. When I get to work, I would take it off and hang it up, and I'd be wearing another sweater underneath it. So I just think if I were wearing it, period, I would burst into flames because it's so hot. And I live in northeastern Ohio, where our winters don't get that cold. So that was the first consideration. Cut it open, turn it into a cardigan or turn it into a jacket, put in a zipper. That's a technique I've never done, so I thought a good chance to learn. But I still have the issue of the sleeve. It's ill-fitting, I would have to re-knit it, and I would have to knit a second sleeve. And I still have the tension issue. I just don't think I would enjoy wearing it, even as a jacket. So my plan is that this fabric, because it is so beautiful, could be used to make some sort of stuffed animal. I'm going to use the Craftsy resource. I'm going to play around first with some fabric and make sure I can sew probably a bunny rabbit, something cute and floppy. And if I can do it successfully with fabric, then I'll cut this up, use it as the fabric, and hopefully end up with a stuffed animal that I can pass along. I can give to someone in my life who would appreciate it and give it some sort of life. Because right now, this has no life. I can't pull it out because the mohair is securely embedded. I just think I would lose the mohair. I would have to keep ripping and cutting. So this really can't get pulled out easily and be reknit or repurposed. Because I chose to use mohair in every stitch of it, I think we're stuck with it. So I've got a great amount of fabric here. It's a large sweater. There's all of this stockinette portion. We've got a good bit of ribbing. So I think I can chop this up and hopefully have a pretty good canvas for making some sort of stuffed animal. So let's rate this project, this failure. I don't think that this was a big failure. I think there were little things that went wrong. I think I was a little naive, a little foolish to go off course with yarn weight. If I had chosen the weights of yarn recommended by the designer, that would have been a much more successful start to the project. The tension issue is a bigger deal. It would have required me to pull things back, reknit them maybe a couple of times, maybe practice that on its own, isolate the skill until I have it strong enough to put into a large garment. So that's a bigger issue. And as I said, I avoid 3-color color work. So for now, that point is moot. It's just off the table. So out of 10, I would give this a 7 for the issues, the missteps, the things that led to it being a failure, an abandoned project. As I bring up the next project, I'll say abandoning something, deciding a project is not for you, is not truly a failure, obviously. We were Zooming the other day with my Patreon group, and we were talking about the ability to choose your path, the ability to choose what is important to you with a project you're making from scratch with your 2 hands. You can decide how you want to make a project. You can decide if it's worth pulling back and redoing a portion to make it perfect. You can decide if it's not worth it to do that and you're happy to keep a couple of discrete mistakes that only you would know about. So in that same vein, deciding that a project is no longer worth finishing or pursuing is not a failure. You're spending your precious time and your precious resources to make whatever it is you've chosen. And if you decide partway through or decide at the very end, this just isn't for me. It's not my taste. It's not my style. It's not very fun to make. It's not what I expected it to be. You can walk away. And there's no shame in that. I feel shame in that, which is why I'm sitting here making a video about it. But in our conversation over on Zoom, there were a lot of level-headed people who could offer their experience and their insights. And it was a good conversation to remind us all that it's not a big deal. So as I sit here pouring all of this out over my failures, please keep that in mind. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm choosing what to do with these fabrics to move on. I don't want to keep them folded up in a basket, taking up space in my life anymore. I want to decide what's happening and then do it. So here we are, project number 2. This is one panel of a sweater. And it doesn't really look like that. So let's take a look at the pattern and give you a little more context for what's going on here. This is Chain Link by Nora Gahn. I'm a big fan of Nora Gahn. I think she has such incredible textured, cabled projects. A lot of them are extremely inventive in the cabled designs, in the structure or construction of the garment, and they almost have a sort of architectural feel. I love that. I'm a big fan. So when I first saw this pattern, I was drawn in first by the photography. I think the photography is incredibly beautiful. The model looks just like one of my good friends from undergrad, which is fun. The elephant in the room, of course, is the shaping. It is different. This big old diamond on the front and the back with these like ruffled bits. I don't know. This one also feels kind of like a dream, like it came to me in a dream and I was like, yes, I have to make this. I would look amazing in this. I've come to the conclusion that I don't think I would look amazing in this. I just can't imagine it. I think it would look like a costume on me. I don't know. But I've made one panel of it. So let's get what we need from the pattern and then we'll take a look at my project. Fingering weight. It's done in pieces. It's beautiful. I think that's all we need to know. So here's my first panel. It was a lot of fun to knit, but you do have a lot going on. These side panels, when the project is done, they just hang. And I don't know if that's for me, but it's beautiful. Let's take a closer look. I think it's great. I think it's inventive. I think the stitches, the yarn, everything looks very nice here. This yarn was from Allegheny Fiber Arts. She came for a trunk show at Around the Table Yarns a few years ago, and I purchased a sweater quantity of this yarn. I think it's really beautiful. I think the amount of dimension is appropriate for a sweater like this. I think even with the variety of the hand dye, you can still see the cabling. You can still see what's going on in the pattern. And this is not yet blocked, but imagine it blocked and then with the help of gravity being worn, the eyelets I think would just look fantastic. So part of me wants to finish this because you don't know until you try. I'm really happy with the back panel. There were no issues. It was a lot of fun to make. I like the fiber. I like the color. I don't really have much else in this sort of gold. I have a yellow sweater, The Bee's Knees by Thea Coleman, but I don't quite have a sort of gold bronze sweater, I don't think. So I might finish it. I might knock out the second panel, try it out, and if I really hate it, maybe I'll find someone in my life who would love it. So that's the only issue here. It's abandoned mostly because I'm second guessing myself, because I'm doubting that original vision I had for the project. So out of 10, where does this fit as a sort of failure? It doesn't sit high. I'd say it's a 5. It's a 5 out of 10. It's right in the middle. I don't know if it's the right thing for me. And when you don't have that clarity or that drive, it can be really hard to pick up your needles and work on the project. It's much easier to take something else in your queue, something else that you've just seen, and to follow that inspiration and that drive. So we'll see. I still have the yarn. I've still got all the details. I followed the pattern as written. I did not deviate. I didn't do anything wild of my own devising. So if I do continue this, it will be straightforward. So we'll find out. Both of us will find out in the future, because right now, nobody knows. right, next up we have this. Can you tell what's going on? Me neither. That's the problem. So this is a cardigan, Mosquito Creek. Let's take a look at the pattern. Here we are, Mosquito Creek cardigan by Moira Engel. I don't know. I just don't know. Here's the picture. It's pretty. I like the shawl collar. I remember when I was first looking for patterns and beginning to knit, I was blown away by a shawl collar. I didn't understand. How do you do it? How does that happen? Whoa. I don't know. Now I know. It's not that crazy. But still, when I saw a shawl collar, I would flip. I was so excited. We've got cables. The cables are attractive. I like the cables. I will say, something I know now is that when you see a pattern like this, with the little placket of cables or the section of cables, and then a section of stockinette next to it, or seed stitch or moss stitch or any sort of texture to fill, if you are larger than the model, most likely the pattern will have the same size placket or section of cabling, and it will fill in more and more and more with stockinette or seed stitch or moss stitch, whatever that filler is. So when I've made many patterns that feature some sort of design along the side panels for a cardigan or centered for a pullover sweater, because I'm making a 2x or a 3x in the pattern sizing, that gets further and further from the ideal sort of focal point of the garment. Or it looks smaller and smaller because there's more and more filler around it. My favorite kind of patterns are the patterns where the larger sizes have different charts. The actual cabling is wider. You repeat the cables more often, or you repeat whatever the detail is instead of having more filler. And there are great designers out there who do that. In this case, I believe the cables are set. So whatever charts are there, you do the chart and then you add more filler, which for me, being much larger than the model pictured, it didn't work out to be a sweater that I still liked. My next misfire is that this calls for worsted weight yarn. I purchased this yarn online, and when it arrived, and when I swatched it, when I wrapped it around a needle, the wraps per inch and the swatching both told me that it was not really worsted. It was not behaving as a worsted weight yarn. So I wasn't achieving the right gauge. I didn't know enough at that time to do anything about that. I just jumped into the pattern. So it does not fit me. I didn't get the sweater that I thought I was going to get. So problem number one, looking at the design versus what would happen for my size, they're not proportionally the same. Problem number two, the yarn I ordered didn't fulfill my expectation of being a worsted weight yarn. And then I didn't know what to do about that. So I have a sweater that doesn't fit. It's a size or two too small. Problem number three, I ran out of yarn. So that's that. Let's take a look at it. But those are the reasons why this is sat. The biggest reason that it will not get finished is because I ran out of yarn. I don't trust the producer or the company where I purchased the yarn that if I were to buy another skein that it would match up. I don't think it would match in weight because the initial worsted weight I bought was not worsted. So I was just frustrated, sort of in a pickle, in a dilemma, which left this to sit for a very long time. So as I mentioned when I first put this on the table, I can't really see what's going on. I love tweed, and so I chose a tweed yarn, but the texture, the sort of slickness of this yarn with the tweed really disguises what's going on with the cable. I think this could be beautiful if it had been done out of a different yarn. So that's on me. I didn't pick a great yarn for this. What I'm wearing is also gray. Doesn't have any tweed, but I think you see the cables pretty well. There are a lot of great yarns, great textures of fiber, great color choices to show cables well. I didn't make a great choice here. It's just busy, busy, and you don't really see the detail that you're meant to see. It feels silly to even talk much more about what we can see because I don't think you can see it well, but I'll say a little bit. If I'm known to do anything, it's to say a little bit. So here on the back panel, the cables are beautiful. You have a large, like, interwoven cable, medium cables, and then kind of braids, small cables on the side. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful back to the sweater. It's not big enough to cover my back, but that's okay. And then we go around to the front. This was done in pieces. And on the front, we just get one column of cables. We get a little mini interwoven bit with a braid. Like I mentioned, everything else is filler. So we get more stockinette next to it, more stockinette next to it. This is meant to be one half of my front, and it is not, unfortunately. It will not fit me. So that's that. Even if it did fit, and even if I could see the cables more clearly, I would be disappointed with the proportions. It would look a little bit silly for me being fairly wide to have just a tiny bit of cabling running down each side. It would look like I'm wearing a stole, like a priest's stole, but not a beautiful one. We've got one sleeve, and on the other side, we're missing a sleeve. So I would need to knit a sleeve. I would need to finish joining the pieces, and then I would need to knit the button band and shawl portion of the collar. So there's a lot left to do, but it's not for me. As far as rating this misfire, this one gets a pretty high rating because I was a little disappointed with the pattern, but I was really disappointed with my decisions, from the yarn, not knowing how to take my gauge swatch and do anything about it, and then even the process of making it. I should have realized at some point that it wasn't going to fit. I should have realized earlier on that I didn't like the proportions of design to filler. So this one, as far as a misfire gets a 9 out of 10. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I don't think I used the best discernment when choosing my pattern. So this will not be finished. I think there is plenty of fabric here to do something. I don't quite know what. This is a superwash wool, so I can't felt it. It's not quite as sturdy as the other project we looked at. I don't know, it could be a very soft, lovable stuffed animal. So I think I'll save the fabric, and if I find success making a stuffed animal out of Arctic spring, then I'll come to this fabric and follow suit. That's that. I am disappointed in this one. I'm disappointed because I didn't pick the best pattern for a cabled cardigan that would look good on me. And then I made silly mistakes. And this was at the very beginning of my knitting journey. So spending money on yarn, buying a pattern, and trying to find time, carve out time to knit and really keep track, do all the counting, follow everything in the pattern, it takes a lot of work. And when you're not experienced, when you're not in the rhythm of that, it's a big undertaking. And I am disappointed because it felt like a big waste of time and resources for a young person who did not have any disposable income at the time. And it was sad. It felt defeating to attempt to follow the pattern, to do everything right, but then not end up with any result. Alas. And last, but certainly not least, something I'm scared to show you. I don't want to show you. I'm scared. This has sat behind me on the shelf in my blocking bin for almost a year. And I talked about it a ton on the channel. It's by a very popular designer, and I don't want to say anything negative against the designer because that's not the point of it. It's not why things necessarily went wrong. This is the Kerr sweater by the Crochet by Rebecca Clow. And for me, this sweater was a major misfire. So let's look at the pattern and then we'll talk about it. All right, here we are on the pattern page. This is the Kerr sweater by Rebecca Clow, Crochet, and it is a beautiful design. I saw this design several times. I saw it on social media, I saw it on Ravelry, and it immediately went into my favorites. And it wasn't until I was preparing to go on my honeymoon, which was a big old trip to the United Kingdom, that I decided I would choose some yarn, I would swatch, and I would take it with me as one of my projects because I would be traveling through Scotland for a portion of the trip, and it's by a Scottish designer. So I thought I want to be working on something that represents a designer, part of the fiber arts community of the places I'm traveling through. I think it's really beautiful. So let's look at the pattern details. This calls for DK weight yarn in 2 colors. So it's just 2-color colorwork, one of my favorites. I think that's all we need to know. Here it is, the Kerr sweater. I chose one of my favorite shades of green from Woolstock, which is Wild Thyme. And then one of the sort of natural neutrals as my contrast. Misfire number 1. Again, and I don't know why I'm always possessed to do this, I chose to work this sweater out of worsted weight yarn. It calls for DK. I love a lot of the DK weight yarns available to me at my local shop, Around the Table Yarns. I don't know why I thought I had to use Woolstock. So misfire number 1, completely on me, choosing to make the sweater heavier than it needs to be. Pattern-wise, that's not going to affect much. I did my swatching, I chose the right size I needed to make, I paid attention to the length of things, but it does make it heavier. That didn't need to be the case. The color work is charming. I think it's a beautiful design. It was wonderful to knit. The spacing of the color work, the sequence of the color work, it's easy to count, it's easy to memorize. I don't think you ever have to catch a float. The stitches are always sort of 2 or 3, maybe 4 apart. So you're not doing extra catching. There's no need for ladder back jacquard. It's very beautiful. It's even beautiful on the reverse. So why is this a misfire? Why am I scared? Why am I upset? One big revelation through this project was that my gauge and tension for knitting stockinette stitch is different than my gauge and tension when knitting 2-color colorwork, which is true of many people. I don't know if it's true of most people, but it's true of many people. You'll see people recommend, if you're doing 2-color colorwork, to go up a needle size because colorwork sort of condenses on itself. You don't have as much elasticity because of all of the floats on the backside of the work. So a lot of people will say this, even in their designs. It might tell you, we recommend going up a needle size for your colorwork. On the flip side of that, you can think of your stockinette as needing to be a needle size down. So if I'm not going up a needle size for my colorwork, when I go to my stockinette or return to my stockinette stitch, I need to go down a needle size because my tension, my gauge is different. So you'll see it when I wear it. The center band of colorwork fits me more snugly. It fits tighter on my body than the stockinette, which almost causes the appearance of the stockinette to balloon or flare out. Obviously, I don't like that. I don't want to balloon. I don't want to flare. I just want to be regular. Next up, let's take a look at these sleeves. You may be saying, the sleeves in the pictures of the design lined up perfectly with the design on the body. You would be correct. Mark, why don't your sleeves line up with the body? That's a great question. And to answer that, I would offer a question and say, why don't the sleeves on lots of people's line up? Here's a quick scroll through Instagram tags of the sweater, and you'll see, and I'm not calling anybody out, I'm not going to specific pages, but you'll just see as I scroll where the sleeve hits. And for a lot of people, it does not line up with the color work on the body. It can be challenging to get color work on a sleeve, on a set-in sleeve or a drop shoulder sleeve, to line up with anything on the body. If this were done as a top-down yoke sweater or a bottom-up yoke sweater, you could make sure that the sleeves align based on where you put the join for the underarm, or where everything trickles down from the top if it's top down. Because this is drop shoulder, the level of the sleeve is left completely to your tension, your blocking, and your body. If your shoulders hit at a different place, if you carry more weight in your upper body or less weight in your upper body, your sleeve will sit higher or hang lower. So no matter what you do, whether you're a fabulous knitter or a newbie knitter, it doesn't matter if you make any mistakes, you do not have control over where the sleeve hits. I think the best possible plan of action would be to knit the body, block the body, and then start your sleeve. Block the start of the sleeve with weights. I mean, you really have to go in and try to handle all the variables and then see where it's going to line up to get it to match. And you may not care if your sleeve and body patterns match. And in a lot of sweaters, it doesn't quite matter. But something like this, where you have a pretty blank canvas with a clear band of pattern, it seems like it should line up. And because the designer's photos all line up, every picture from the designer appears, I think, like pretty perfectly aligned. That was my expectation. And I think that's the expectation that I was meant to have going into it. So I'm bummed. I think the fit is a little wonky. That was me, my stockinette tension versus my colorwork tension. I think the band design sits potentially too low. And that's another thing that will depend on your body. It will depend on the length of your torso, your armhole depth. And when you look at different pattern examples from other crafters, some people look great in it. Some people look like me in it, and everything in between. So I was bummed. And because this was a travel project, I was talking about it a ton. I was showing the progress. I was really excited to finish it. And when I got it off the needles, it just wasn't working for me. It wasn't what I wanted. So that's that. I think the colorwork design is great. Rebecca has a ton of sweaters, a huge output of designs. And I haven't made any of the others because this was the first one I chose. And I do think it's very true that if you choose a design and you work a project, you invest that time and that money, and it bites you in any way, whether it's your fault or not, it can burn you. It can turn you off from choosing other designs from that same designer, or that same company, or using that yarn, whatever it was, whichever variable caused the dislike. So that's my unfortunate tale. For a rating, I don't know. Some of the issues were mine. Some of the issues I think came from the pattern or the construction and where the color work would hit. I think this one gets an 8 out of 10 as far as my failure. It's not something I want to wear, but it is finished. It was fun to make, so that gets major points. It was fun, but it's just not what I'm looking for. It's not what I'm happiest with. So what do we do now? In this case, the project is finished. So I thought if it grew on me, if I liked it more and more, I could wear it. And I've let it exist for a whole season. And now that I know I don't really want to wear it, it's not for me, I can decide what I want to do with it. So I have a ton of fabric to work with. I have a lot of beautifully patterned fabric from the sleeves and the body. I also have a lot of stockinette fabric and a fair portion of ribbing. So I think I have a lot of options with this. And if there's enough fabric, it could go into that stockpile of potential stuffed animal creations. But I think the ideal thing here might be to make a bag. I met someone at a fiber fair, Wild and Woolly in Berea, a couple of years ago now, and she watches the channel, so hello to you. She had a fabulous knit bag, and I believe it was colorwork of some sort, or it might have been cables, but the bag was cut from, I think, an existing sweater. The fabric was felted for strength. And I think there were all sorts of great details, like a reinforced sort of leather bottom to the bag, leather handles or canvas handles. There's a lot you can do. So I think because I have such a great rectangular shape with all of that color work, I should make a reinforced, gusseted tote bag that I can use for projects, or at least for books or shopping or travel. I think that would be a great way to let this fabric and let the memories of my trip, the memories of my honeymoon, the memories of knitting this in so many beautiful places, it would let all of that live on. So if you have ideas, if you have solutions and ideas for the fabric that I want to use, please let me know. I would love to hear your experiences with failed or abandoned projects and what you like to do. What do you do to salvage it? Do you pull the yarn out and reuse it? Do you gift it to the person that would be able to wear it and enjoy it? Or do you have other more creative ideas up your sleeves? Please let me know. As always, you can find me over on Ravelry and Instagram at MakerMarkKnits. I'm always happy to hear from you there. And I hope that you've enjoyed sitting with me, diving into a few projects, a few missteps, and maybe a little bit of advice about cautiously choosing your projects, paying attention to what's going on as you make them, and then enjoying them. I think everything we make, we should enjoy, we should use. It should not just sit protected on a shelf or hidden away. So if you're a crafter, if you like to make anything of any kind, make sure you're using it and enjoying it. And I think with that, I should say goodbye. As always, happy knitting, happy crocheting, happy crafting to you, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.